All right. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I put on a put in for a 7x7, but we're not doing 7x7s. Let me make that a little size. I just wanted to run through this web page and resource that I put together. I've been trying very hard to make CI/CD more accessible. I very much believe it's the best investment that you can make in your software development process, but it's hard and it's complicated and there's a lot of moving parts. It's difficult to set up. And so when you're just getting started, it's kind of tricky. So I've been documenting what I learned. It's kind of started out as me creating some GCLI tools. So you'll see the website is sas-gcli-tools.gitlab.io. And the website started out as just documentation for these tools. And then I started adding other stuff. You guys can feel free to ask any questions you want. Basically, under the getting started section, I talk a little bit about what CI is, why you want to do it, some steps to take if you're new. There's a bunch of introductory videos here. There's some panel discussions and some presentations when I did here at the GLA with Casey on CD, setting up GitLab runners, stuff like that. There's also some other options. BLT is something that Matthias has again. I can type it in the chat. And so here under installation lists all the different tools that I've built up. These are all GCLI tools. So I use GCLI instead of the LabVIEW CLI. Highly recommend it. It's much faster. It's nicer. It lets you write back to the command line while things are running instead of waiting till the end. So it's good for updating the user on progress. I have a tool to clear the LabVIEW cache that's built into GCLI now, but when I wrote it, it wasn't. I have a tool for applying a VIPC. So you have a VIPC for your project. Yeah, did I misspell GitLab? Yes, it is GitLab. Yes, sorry. Typing too fast. Should have just copied it. So I have I have a LabVIEW build spec. So anything you can build in LabVIEW packages, NI packages, executables, installers, source distributions, PPLs. You can use that to build. I've got unit testing stuff. So I got a VI tester and LUnit support. I've got tools for building packages. All these tools, you can look at the repos and they all use themselves to build themselves. There's a tool. The last two are for a special case. So often I build a package and then I want to make sure that it installs. So I have a tool to install it. And then the switcheroo tool is really interesting. So when I'm developing the tool, I can write unit tests against the source code. And then once I install it, I can run this switcheroo tool and it lets me take those tests and instead point them at the installed package or at the PPL that I'm building and then run those tests again. So just kind of make sure that everything gets built and put in the correct place and it works once it's built. They're all open source. There's some information here on some various things. And then for each tool, if I look at that menu on the left, I've got a description, the options that you can pass in. This one doesn't have any. And then some example codes. So scroll down like here, the VIPC. You can pass in all these options. You can pass in the LabVIEW version, the timeout. And here's kind of how you use it. And they've all got repositories on GitLab. They're all open source. You can take them and go change them around and do whatever. They're pretty lightweight. They don't do a whole lot. And then I've got a bunch of information on setting up runners. So basically, kind of have two types. So there's like static runners, which is basically I have a old desktop or laptop sitting in the corner, and I want to use that as my build machine, and it's just always going to be running and sitting in the background with LabVIEW on, and whenever there's a job, it'll pick it up. You can also do it with a virtual machine, but the idea is that the machine that has LabVIEW on it is just always running, and it's just kind of sitting there waiting. And it talks about how to set that up. This is just for GitLab, but GitHub is very similar. Maybe someday I'll get around to documenting that. Somebody mentioned Docker in Eli's presentation. So I've got information on how to basically launch virtual machines as if they were Docker containers. So you just kind of you have an existing virtual machine that has, I don't know, LabVIEW 2020 and VIPM and whatever else you want installed on it. It's kind of just sitting there, kind of like a Docker image. And then the runner actually runs on the virtual machine host. In this case, I'm using KVM, but you could totally adapt it to work with other VMware, Hyper-V, whatever you want. And basically, when the job comes in, the host is sitting there listening, and then it spawns a virtual machine based off of the existing one. So it creates a new copy of it, runs it, and runs all the commands over SSH. And that's kind of tricky to set up. So this talks about how to set all that up and get it to work. Definitely, this is like, I really like this approach. I think it's, in some ways, it's actually better than Docker, because if something doesn't work with Docker, it's kind of hard to troubleshoot. With this, if it doesn't work, like the machine goes away, but I can go and create a copy of that machine myself, run it. It has a GUI. I can log into it. I can, clone the repository and run the steps by myself. One thing I try to do is always use like bash scripts. So I try to push as much out of the YAML configuration file into bash scripts so that I can like rerun them locally if I need to. And it talks about the advantages and disadvantages. The other key thing here is I have a bunch of sample projects. So I have a sample project. This is just like the DQMH CML CI template that comes with LabVIEW. It shows you how to build an executable and NI package. And I have one for building a VIPM package. These are actually really simple. Like you can literally clone them, and you change this variables file. You edit, what your build machine tag is. You edit. If you rename the VIPC file, you just change a variable, and it all works. So you can just take this and copy it and use it as a starting point. I have a simple GitHub example too. And then I have a little bit of notes on bash scripting and stuff, some stuff that I figured out from that of how to make all that work. Anybody have any questions? Throw them in the chat. That is pretty much my presentation. I think that took about 7 minutes, which is about what I expected. So I've got 7 minutes for. Yes, bash does work on Windows. So there's a couple options to do bash stuff on Windows. You can use WSL. That's not what I'm doing. I'm using git bash. So when you install Git for Windows, it installs git bash, and you can set things up to run that. You can totally do all this with PowerShell too. I just don't know PowerShell, and I know how to do bash, and it seems simpler and easier to me, which is kind of crazy because bash is not necessarily simple and easy, but yeah, I figured out how to make it work. And you don't have to jump through hoops either to get stuff to execute. If you ever played around with PowerShell, in order to get things to execute, you need like admin privileges, and you have to like set some kind of policy or some execution policy or something crazy. Bash just kind of works and git bash very easily. I would really love to just move to Linux only, but unfortunately my customers require me to use Windows. So, and also VIPM is not working so well on Linux, although at least not for me. But Jim has been working on that. I think the big thing with VIPM on Linux, I think, was the API. The VIPM API didn't work, and I use VIPM packages for all my reuse stuff, so that was a big problem. Good intro. Maybe this website, hopefully. Yeah. Other questions, comments? How many people, just out of curiosity, are actually doing some sort of CI/CD stuff? Yeah. So Ali, yeah, I've been documenting this all along, and I've been writing a series of blog posts, and I kept pointing people to the blog posts, and I was like, you know what? I was like, it's kind of a pain in the butt to navigate amongst all these blog posts and kind of put it all together. So I tried to throw it all in one place. So, and if anybody has anything to add to this, send me an email or whatever. It's actually in a repo, so you can even put in a pull request if you want. But there's the poll. Thank you, whoever put that up. Yeah, and if it's not clear, especially if it's not clear to you, Alan, let me know, and I will make sure that it's clear, and we can clarify and reword stuff. Yeah, CI/CD is very scary because there's lots of moving parts and stuff, and it's interesting. When you look at it from the big picture, it's not that complicated. It's when you get down into the details and getting it working the first time is really hard too, because there's lots of little things. Like you're writing bash script code in a YAML file, and the YAML file parses slightly different than the bash script does, and it causes problems. And that's why these templates are a good starting point, because they all work right out of the box. So if you start with that, then you've got a good starting point. And then, of course, you apply iterative development to it. So, you make a change, and if it runs and works, great. And if it doesn't, then you know what you broke, and you go back and try to redo it or fix it. So you just take some small steps, and you can figure out how to make it work for whatever CI/CD system you all use. If anybody does GitHub, I'm happy to put more GitHub stuff up there, and or even what is it, Bitbucket. So, other questions, comments? Mega. I have all my programs backed up on Mega. I don't actually know what Mega is. So, I don't know. Mega's like Dropbox. Okay. I will check that out. I will say Dropbox or Dropbox equivalent is probably better than nothing. My recommendation, though, would be to use a tool designed specifically for source code. So something like Git. It tends to be the thing that people use. If you find that too complicated, Subversion would also work. But I would probably recommend Git, just because it seems to be everywhere. The thing that you get from using Git or something is having multiple people work on it at the same time. It deals a lot better with conflicts. So some of the Dropbox type solutions don't deal very well with conflicts, and don't give you the tools to manage conflicts. Yes, Subversion is SVN. Okay, so you're going to be more blunt than I am, but yes, I was trying to say that without actually saying it quite that way. So yes. Thank you, Sri, for saying that. Keep in mind, everybody starts somewhere. So, if you don't know, you don't know. That's fine. Now you know. So, yes, definitely try to look up Git or SVN. SVN is kind of the old way that we all used to do it. And many of us have moved on to Git, but not all of us. Yes, I do have a course, too. I was trying not to be too salesy, but yes, I do have a course on using Git. It's called Using Git Effectively. It's pretty good. I'm biased. I made it, but I think it covers a lot of stuff. I tried to kind of like walk the line between two. It's not on YouTube. It's on my website, sasworkshops.com. If you go to courses, there's a thing on Git. And yeah, it's about 6 or 7 hours of video and a bunch of exercises. And yeah, it kind of walks the line between getting too down into the weeds of what's going on underneath Git, but it gives you a really good understanding so you can make good decisions. And one of the things with Git is it lets you do all these workflows. And so trying to figure out which workflow is the best and how to make Git match your workflow is actually kind of important. You can choose one of the pre-made ones, but if you understand what you're doing, you can make it match your workflow. That's kind of a better idea. So. SAS workshops only list shortcuts up to 2020. I am not sure, but let's go check it out. Here, if anybody wants to see, I haven't actually looked at my website in a while. Should make sure it's even working. So if you, SAS workshops, if you go to courses, getting started in software development is just like a list of resources, and this is using Git effectively. And here you go. And you can buy the course there. There's also, I think it's, I don't have a link to it, but there is a syllabus, I think that link will work. There you go. There's a syllabus that has lists what all the videos are, and this is like the outline of the course. And then there's a preview where you can watch a few videos. These are like the introductions to each of the sessions, kind of telling you why it's important. So yes, the Git for Teams book is awesome because it basically, it's exactly what I was talking about. It's start with the workflow that you want And then back into, okay, this is the workflow that we want. How do we make Git do that? And what are the commands? And then you build up some resources for your developers. Either like you build scripts or you have a wiki or something that says, hey, if you want to do this, here are the Git commands to do that. And it's really useful. And also it's useful for troubleshooting. Oh, one other thing with Git, there is a website called Oh Shit Git. I think I can say that on here. So if you ever do something crazy and you're like, I don't know what to do, this is all like, I did something and I don't know, like I meant to do X and it didn't work. What do I do instead? And it talks about how to do things. So changing the message on your last commit, or you committed something to master and it should have been on a different branch or a new branch. It tells you how to fix those types of problems. The use mentioned distinction is a thing, Sam. Okay, I missed that. Oh. Okay, I think I got your joke now, Alan. Sorry. It was like a little after I said it that I ran into it. Okay. Yeah, definitely when you're starting out with Git, it can be overwhelming. So having something in the beginning to just kind of hold your hands, and this oh shit Git is definitely worth it. Actually, I think there's also, if you want to be politically correct, I think there's an oh dang Git. No? Oops. I thought there was a version that was less, more politically correct, but I don't know. There is another version of this. It's like, oh, dang it, Git. That's it. There you go. So if you want to be politically correct, you can go to dang it, Git. And it's the same thing. So, all right. I think that's about it. So thank you all for coming to my 15-minute talk. Thanks.